It's Friday night. It's the preview show. It's the No Nay Never podcast.
Hello and welcome to our Friday preview show, listeners. It's all new and exciting. We have, as promised, delivered 2 podcasts a week this season, so hopefully you are listening to this either on your way to Arsenal on Saturday, or you are getting your pre-match build-up, or it's just something to get you in the mood for the weekend. But I am joined with this special preview, and will be every single week, by the man, the myth, Statman Dave Roberts. Dave, welcome.
Thank you. Yes, good to be back, and a little bit different this season. I'm looking forward to seeing how this goes.
Me too. We missed you on the main show. It felt like I'd had my right arm cut off, to be honest, when I was all getting myself set up to tee you in for all the stats, and I was like, oh no, Dave's not here. But we've given you a special role of honour this season, Dave. You're going to be headlining our Friday preview show and bringing us all the stats and all of the exciting things that we need to do. So let's not mess about, because this is going to be a short, sharp hit of stats, and let's get going. We are, of course, playing tomorrow, if you listen to this Friday, or today if it's Saturday, Arsenal away, who have become, I think, our nemesis in this league. We don't really have anybody in this league who is, I guess, a rival. But obviously we all know, all Burnley fans know, that at some point in an Arsenal fixture we seem to get absolutely by referees. So we are hoping that VAR this season is going to level the playing field a little bit. So we're going to start with Dave telling us all about the opposition. Dave, who are we playing? Tell us about them.
We're playing Arsenal. Arsenal FC can trace their history back to 1886, when workers from the Woolwich Arsenal armament factory established a football team, and initially they called themselves Dial Square. This was due to a sundial which positioned above the factory entrance. The club turned professional in 1891, and by 1893 they were known as Woolwich Arsenal, due to the area they were playing in, obviously, and they were admitted to the Football League in 1893. In 1913, they experienced some financial difficulties. They were actually relegated from the First Division. Burnley were promoted and took their place, and the club then moved from South to North London. And by 1919, the Woolwich part of the name had also been dropped.
Nice. Do they have any nicknames, Dave?
We know Arsenal as the Gunners, or Gooners is commonly used as well. But interestingly, in the early days, newspaper reports referred to Arsenal as the Infants. And this isn't a reference to the players or supporters being childish, but seems to be a shortening of the word infantry, relating to the club's origins in the armament factory, as we've already mentioned.
What about the ground? Where do they play? What's their capacity?
Arsenal played at Highbury, the Arsenal Stadium at Highbury, from 1913 to 2006, and they moved to a new stadium for the start of the 2006-07 season. It was delayed slightly, but 2006-07 was when they moved to the new ground, which was named the Emirates for sponsorship reasons. But for those of us who prefer to look beyond sponsors' names, which can sometimes change, the new stadium project was initially known as Ashburton Grove, so the ground's often referred to as the Grove for short. And the stadium holds just over 60,000 people. Looking on the current Premier League handbook, it holds 60,704, and they're expected to be just over 1,500 Burnley fans there on Saturday.
Okay, so what about the team, Dave? Who's their all-time leading goal scorer?
This is one we've heard of, because a lot of teams, you've got to dig quite a long way back in history to find out who their top marksman was. That's not the case for Arsenal. Frenchman Thierry Henry is their top scorer. He scored 228 goals in 377 matches to overtake another player who we know very well, who's Ian Wright. He's second on the list with 185 goals in 288 matches.
So what about their record against Burnley? Cheer us all up. Tell us what was their heaviest ever defeat against the Clarets.
Their heaviest defeat against us, we managed to beat Arsenal 5-2. We did it twice down there. We've had bigger wins at Burnley, but we are talking just about the away games here. We had 2 thumping 5-2 wins in the one in the 1950s. That was October 1953. and then another one in December 1960, which was that was obviously just after Burnley had won the title. In that match, Ray Pointer scored a hat-trick, and Jimmy McIlroy and Jimmy Robson scored the other 2 goals.
So, okay, depress us then. We know obviously that's the exciting thing about Burnley. What's the heaviest defeat that they've laid on us?
Well, there's 3 going back over the years. There's been 3 by 5 goals. We've had one 6-1 defeat and 2 5-0 defeats. 2 of those were back in the depths of history, but the more recent one, a lot of Burnley fans will remember, particularly if they're at the match. I was down there for this one. It was the penultimate match of the 2017-18 season. Burnley had pretty much guaranteed their European place by this point. So it didn't matter quite as much, but this was memorable for being Arsene Wenger's last match as Arsenal manager, and it was a heavy 5-0 defeat that day.
So how far do we have to go back until we find Burnley's last win away at Arsenal?
Well, it is in my lifetime, just. You've got to go back 45 years to September 1974 for Burnley's last away win at Arsenal. Peter Noble scored the winning goal in the 78th minute, that was at Highbury, to seal a 1-0 win for Burnley. The match was also featured on Match of the Day as well. They had it featured as their second match. But since then, Burnley have played Arsenal away 8 times in all competitions at Arsenal, and we've lost all 8 of those games.
Oh, well, that's not a fun stat. Let's have a look at a bit closer to home then. What happened last season for Arsenal?
They finished 5th in the Premier League, and they also had a decent season in Europe. They got to the final of the Europa League, but they were beaten by Chelsea. Obviously, Chelsea have just played Liverpool in the Super Cup. They got through to that by beating Arsenal. They were heavily beaten in the final of the Europa League.
And who's managing them at the moment?
It's 48-year-old Spaniard, Unai Emery. He's pitting his wits against Sean Dyche this weekend, and he's just begun his second season with Arsenal this season.
Well, it wouldn't be a preview show and it wouldn't be a Statman show, Dave, unless you told us your fun and famous head-to-heads. Give us some head-to-head stats.
Yeah, looking back again, this is away games only. Burnley have played at Arsenal. This is various grounds going back over the years. 52 matches in total. We're not yet in double figures for wins. We've only got 9 wins. There have been 9 draws and 34 defeats. And if you narrow that down just to the top flight away matches, Burnley have played 43, won 9, drawn 8, and lost 26.
What about players? Who's played for both sides?
Well, not that many. There's only quite a small list of names compared to some of the clubs that we look at. And if you look at the players who have played for Burnley and Arsenal, represented both teams since the Second World War, we've got the likes of Andrew Cole, who started out at Arsenal before going on to play for Newcastle and Manchester United, and then also later in his career for Burnley. Lee Dixon, who went the other way, he started with Burnley and then had a few other moves and then ended up down at Arsenal. Jim Fennell, goalkeeper from the 1960s, and then a few more from more recent times. Danny Carbassian, Mark Randall, Paul Shaw, John Spicer, and Ian Wright, who we've already mentioned as well. Well, that's the extent of the players who've played for both.
Excellent. So we know that the game's on Saturday, 12:30 kickoff live on BT Sport. The final one, the guy that's going to finally level the playing field. Who's the referee on Saturday?
Tranmere Rovers superfan Mike Dean is the referee this Saturday. Veteran 51-year-old. He's actually been in charge for 40 previous Burnley matches, which is more than any current official on the referees list. So he's very experienced, and as you've mentioned already, we've got VAR, hopefully to level the playing field this time.
Yeah, hopefully. I think we've had a lot of Mike Deans over the years. Now, I know, Dave, that was all very serious and very impressive, but I know that deep down in the Dave Roberts Statman bank that there's some fun and crazy stat in there. So give us your miscellaneous stat of the week.
Oh, well, I've dug out a few actually this week. We've got of the promote. Well, in terms of the apart from the couple of promoted teams that we've yet to play this season, Norwich and Sheffield United, we haven't played them yet in the Premier League era. Arsenal are the only current Premier League team that Burnley haven't beaten in a top flight match since our first Premier League promotion back in 2009. And not only that, we've yet to even muster a draw against Arsenal. We've played 10 previous occasions, home and away, and we've lost all 10 of those matches. So even the home games, we've not managed to get a point. Going back into one or two other things as well, A 1-0 Burnley defeat at Highbury in April 1971 confirmed Burnley's relegation from the First Division after an unbroken spell of 24 years in the top flight. That all began back in 1947. Burnley lost in the cup final, got promoted, but then spent 24 years in the top flight. But it was a match at Arsenal that ended that in 1971. A couple of other quick ones as well. Willie Irvine scored in his debut for Burnley in the First Division match against Arsenal. That was at Highbury in May 1963. He was only 19 at the time, and he scored the first goal in a 3-2 win for Burnley. And the last one relates to Arsenal players and scorers. Arsenal striker Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang has already scored 6 times against Arsenal during the last 2 seasons. That makes him second on Arsenal's highest all-time goal scorers in matches against Burnley. He's got some way to go, though, to catch up with Jimmy Brain, who was an Arsenal forward in the 1920s and 1930s. He scored 12 times against Burnley for the Gunners, including 4 in one game as well, I think. So although he's in second place, he's got quite a way to go.
Fantastic. Well, I think it's about time we met our opposition, don't you? This week we are very, very pleased to welcome Jason McKenna, who, as well as being an Arsenal fan, also runs the FPL Goalmouth Scramble Podcast. Jason, welcome to No Nay Never.
Hi there. An absolute pleasure to be on. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem at all. How on earth did you become an Arsenal fan, Jason?
Oh, it's a good question, and I was racking my brains. It brought back some nostalgia from yesteryear. So I do come from North London, and of course, I had to support a local team. I chose obviously the best team in the local area, although Tottenham is geographically probably a bit closer, but my dad luckily pushed me in the right direction. Also, interestingly enough, my dad worked for Arsenal, and I have as well. So through my youth, he used to take me to the stadium quite often because he was a stadium staff member. We got behind the scenes stuff. And my first ever match, I think, was Dynamo Kiev, and I've got a little brochure and ticket stub framed in my room. So Arsenal is well into my life. As I said, I used to work there as well. So a Gooner through and through my family as well.
Oh, I love that. I always love how many fans we speak to whose dads push them the way their clubs are. Jason, can you remember what was the first Arsenal-Burnley match that you remember seeing or sort of, I guess, being at?
So I, watch every Arsenal match, however the means may be. And one of the first ones that I remember was actually us crashing out of the League Cup 2008 to you guys. And it was a big shock, but I also think it kind of ushered in that new era of Burnley being quite a hard team to play against for top teams. You guys were still in the Championship at that point, but you came up to the Premier League in 2009-10 season, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I think it was a little bit later. Anyway, so we got knocked out, and I remember Jack Wilshere, Aaron Ramsey, and Fabianski all playing, and they've all left now. Really sad, 11 years ago, but how the times have changed. And I think the person that scored both the goals, so it was a brace, talking of braces with like Aubameyang earlier, it was Kevin McDonald who scored a brace against us. So maybe there might be somebody replicating that this weekend.
I would like to think so. Step up, Sir Ashley of Barnes.